Call the order of the zoning bylaw committee of March 27, 2023. Roll call attendance.
Clark Brewer here.
Tom Callahan here.
Cassie Malatesta here.
Okay. Joining us is Cassandra Thayer and Judge Cutler. Thank you for being here. So this will be real quick. If you didn't see my email late in the day, I was out of the office most of the afternoon, but the agenda that's actually posted for tonight is the agenda for our 1 April meeting, not tonight's meeting. Tonight is just going to be, I thought we just need to give an update on where we are with all the boards since we've met with almost all. Well, yeah, we have met with all of them at least once since we last met. And with that, the select board, when we first were scheduled to meet them on the 7th, we did not get very far because it was late in their meeting, so it got postponed. Planning board has had 2 hearings now on everything on the 8th and whatever last Wednesday was. Advisory we met with on the 15th. And I ran into Rob Hillman yesterday, and it's unlikely we're going to have to meet with them again because the tweaks in the bylaws that have been made since, it's not something they consider major, so they're probably just going to go ahead with their votes. We met with zoning last week, and they are going to vote tomorrow night at 6. And then the select board, its presentation and its vote will be tomorrow. And Judge Cutler, you may not like this, but they scheduled this for 8:15.
Okay. Zoom or in person?
On Zoom. On Zoom, but in their agenda, they've got another executive session that seems to have killed their schedules the last couple of times, but they got some other things they'll discuss and then us. But I'm not anticipating. We had advisory was a little over an hour. The zoning board was more like 2 hours. I'm thinking we're going to be more on the hour end of things with them. I don't think we're going to anticipate a lot of questions from them. So that's where we are. So I thought for tonight for us, we would just reaffirm the votes that we made on the issues that have changed, on the articles that changed. And the first of those is Article 1, the article that's and I don't know about the numbering, by the way. I think they're numbered in order of the zoning articles, and I think it's right now 22 to 27. But I'm going to make an effort tomorrow to push us up a little bit, maybe into the articles in the teens, so that we don't have any issues of a quorum at town meeting and all that. But they have some other big issues. The town hall renovation price tag is going to be on the town meeting, so they got some other things to deal with. But I'm going to ask at least that we move up. But anyway, the article that deals with Article 113, we made one small change in.
Excuse me, Tom. Quick question.
Yep.
The reason why we're voting on this again is because it's final language, and the plan is to put the report of every committee that reviews and votes on these underneath the article, so that all the members of town meeting know which committee voted and what the vote was.
Right. The deadline, I guess, for publication is April 4th, so that's why the select board moved this up to tomorrow night.
Okay.
And zoning moved it up for us to tomorrow night as well. They were originally only going to meet on the 4th. So.
All right. Sorry, I interrupted. You were
that's all right. No, that's all right. And so there was one change that came from the first planning board hearing, where one of the purposes in Article 1 is to encourage diverse housing, and it originally said opportunities. Now it says options. That's the only change that I recall we made.
Okay, I'll move to vote on that change.
All right. I'll second that. So again, our past vote was 5-0. Take a roll call.
Clark Brewer, aye.
Tom Callahan, aye.
Cassie Malatesta, aye.
Unanimous.
We don't have the other 2, but maybe it'll probably go into print as 3-0. But maybe at the night of the meeting, the night of town meeting, we'll schedule this committee as well as the planning board as having a meeting that night, so that any decisions that need to be made on the fly can be made. All right, the next one was Article 3 didn't change, so that remains a 5-0 vote. Article 6 did not change, that remains a 5-0 vote. In Article 8, all we did was an issue that Woody raised is to we were deleting the existing section 8.10, which deals with temporary structures. It's deleted, was going to be deleted mainly because it's Article 8 is not where it belongs. It probably belongs, if anywhere, in Article 4. So Woody just wanted it to stay into place somewhere for the next 6 months until we redo Article 4. So we'd agreed to do that, and it will now become Section 4.3R of the bylaw. So that's the only change to Article 8. That Article 8 existing Section 8.10 is going to be saved for the time being and moved to Section 4.3R. So with that, I'd like to just, again, we were 5-0 in the past on this article, so take a new vote.
Motion to approve the change.
All right, second. All right, and all in
There
favor?
was one other change to that.
What other? I'm sorry. What was the other one?
Originally, we were going to delete 4.21, which was the special permit provision.
Yeah, but I think that's with Article 12. Right? Isn't that was in connection?
Was that
with
Article 12? Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So, all right. So all in favor?
Clark Brewer, aye.
I'm Callahan, aye.
Cass Malatesta, aye.
Okay, good. And the next one was Article 12. And again, Woody was concerned about the second step in that article was to delete Section 4.2A, which was where the return of the use variance was placed at the town meeting a couple of town meetings ago. Clearly, the ability to give a use variance has been incorporated into the language of the variance of Section 12. The issue that Woody had was about the special permit part of that. Giant legal debate about it. Woody versus the judge. But well, shall I say yes? I'll say the word placate him for at least for the next 6 months until we reform things. We are not deleting 4.2A in its entirety.
Or at all. At all.
So we'll have a redundancy with respect to the variance, but we're keeping the special permit part. And then the nub of that issue is that what we wrote in bringing back the use variance was that any use that wasn't listed could be allowed by special permit. Judges pointed out that legally by case law and et cetera, you can only allow by special permit a use that's listed in your table of uses.
Yeah, specifically identified. Yeah.
So, and the zoning board takes, the Woody, I won't speak for the whole board, but kind of takes a position where we can do any special permit, allow any use we want. Legally incorrect, fine, it won't, it's been in there for a while. Another 6 months isn't going to kill us. So we're keeping that in. And was there another change to Article 12? I think there was one other small change.
75-day limit.
Oh, yeah. That's something Lauren brought up in our second planning board hearing, that to the 75-day limit on a site plan, there's accommodation if you have a joint site plan special permit process going, that 75-day limit won't apply or can be extended. So those were the two changes to 12. So again, we voted 5-0 in the past on that. Take a motion on that one.
Move to approve.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Clark Brewer, aye.
On Callahan, aye.
Cass Malatesta, aye.
Thank you. All right, then Article 2, the height definition. So since the last meeting, as a result of, I think it was the first planning board hearing and some public comments, the measurement at the bottom is now going to read that it's 12 equidistant points. And rather than being made at 10 feet off the foundation, it's going to be made at the foundation. I think that was all we did. There's those two changes, nothing else changed.
So the language in this particular warrant article still has the height change from the midpoint to the peak.
Yes, it does.
So far, yeah, so far.
Yes, it does. And
So I mean, we
yeah.
haven't voted yet, but I'm not in support of that change.
I know you're not.
Although I will say, just for discussion purposes, changing the base definition to the foundation would raise the overall base grade, because most grades slopes away from the foundations for practical reasons, to get water away from a house. So that at the foundation is the highest point, essentially.
Except we're likely talking about a new foundation that doesn't exist yet.
Well, it's the same calculation, whether it's an existing foundation or a new foundation.
But you can't add additional fill in order to raise it up.
Understood.
Right.
Oh, and one other small chat reminded me that there was a redundant phrase at the end of the definition of reconstruction grade with respect to the fact of measuring it at the foundation. But I don't know, you remember that hearing that, who was it? Mike Sardina brought it up, and nobody had ever questioned the logic of why we were measuring 10 feet off the foundation before. It never came up before. So anyway, those were the changes. And
Clark, can I just ask a quick question? So does that, you're not saving 10 feet, right?
what's that?
By going from, you're not going from 10 feet off to
No,
the foundation, so you get
no.
a net 10 feet add, right?
Right. You're going 12 equidistant points around the whole foundation at the point of where the foundation would be built. All right. All right.
I'm sorry, Tom, I can't move this one.
No, I know. And here's, well, here's the quandary, because Cassie, with all due respect, I think you should sit this one out.
I do too. Jack, I was going to say, Jack asked that he specifically said that I need to.
Tom,
Yeah.
One point, we made that change in the pre-construction grade thing, but we didn't change it in finished grade. The finished grade still says around the entire perimeter of the constructed foundation along a continuous line 10 feet distant from said foundation. Do you want to make that consistent?
No, you know what? That actually then addresses Clark's point that the finished grade will be higher at the foundation than it was. So I think that's fine.
Okay.
Clark, good catch, Clark. So I don't know. Now we're sitting here with probably a 1-to-1 vote on this, when the committee was 3-1, well, 3-2, but it should have been 3-1-1 last time. So.
In terms of making a motion and getting someone to second it, I mean, if you make a motion and then I second it for the purposes of voting, I think that's.
I just think that we know what the result's going to be, though. We know the result's going to be 1-to-1. So I think we just defer this one for our board till town meeting. So, or we do it at our next meeting when we have everybody here.
Clark, I want to understand a little more. So on the sloped roof, you're saying that if we don't allow a measurement 5 feet above the midpoint, you're going to lose an entire story?
Yeah, essentially for both 1.5-story structures, which are like garages or portions of buildings that can be closer to the setback, in the bylaw, those 1.5 stories essentially become 1 story with a 5-foot reduction going to the peak. So
what about in dormers?
Yeah, well, you can't put a dormer on a flat roof, so I don't.
No, but the flat roof is going to remain exactly as it is now. It's just measured.
No. Well, I'm saying that you change pitched roof 1.5-story additions and garages to 1 story.
But what I'm saying is, what about, so you have a pitched roof and it's the top that's 35, right? So how many feet, let's say you count for 3 feet of the foundation above the ground, and then you have how many feet for the story, the first story above the foundation?
Well, I did it in my diagram. I think I had about 3 feet, and then, you know, maybe 10 feet floor to floor.
And there you are, 13.
For a second.
A second floor is another 10 or another 12 or what?
You know, for a second floor, you know, you could even say 9, 22. But then you have to have a narrow gable end in order to have a peak roof. I mean,
well, 22,
really,
and then you have
really
10 feet to the top.
Where it's a killer is for commercial construction, because your typical first floor for commercial doesn't want to be any less than 16 feet floor to floor. It's so it really kills that third floor for commercial construction, and it kills that half story for residential construction.
If they do peak.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't change the flat roof.
It doesn't change. Well, the flat roof hasn't changed.
Well,
that doesn't change. That's
so there's a volumetric
preference. That was Woody's whole comment, that he was concerned about the risk of people trying to skirt by that bylaw, and we'd get more flat roofs and modern designs.
Which is a ludicrous argument that's
not necessarily. I mean,
well, Clark,
there's a volumetric preference for flat roofs if you're trying to get the space.
But Clark, the measurements for residential, you can get 3 stories. You can get a garage with space above it.
No, you really can't get a garage with space above it.
I disagree. I wholeheartedly
not with
disagree.
the story and a half. Well, it's right there in the diagram. Essentially, it's a flat roof or a very low pitched roof by going to the peak. And the impact is more significant, I think, for these story and a half structures like garages and portions of a building that can be closer to the setback.
How is it different now? All right, so now if you have a flat roof garage and you're limited in height to 15 feet, how many stories do you get?
Well, you lose a half a story. You lose the ability
to you're not losing any. But what I'm saying is, but right now, the height is 35 feet to the top of a flat roof building.
Right, but for a pitched roof.
I'm just trying to say, you said they're losing a half story and a flat roof, but they're not. It's the exact same, right?
No, I didn't say they're losing a half story for a flat roof. Essentially, to get a garage to work, it's essentially got to be a flat roof.
Why?
That you lose the half story or ability to have a garage with a dormer. You don't get that. Because
the peak will be, because the knee walls will be too
Take a look at the diagram. It's very clear. It's got to be, you know, like a 412 pitch in order for the garage doors to fit and all that kind of stuff. The 5 feet makes a big difference there. In the larger example where you're going up 35 feet for the main part of a building, I mean, as an architect, there are ways to try to make that work, you know, narrower gables, that kind of thing, to get some attic space. But, you know, it's just, it's
not killing 3-story built houses. It's not. Unless, you know, you're attributing
I believe that it really kills the attic.
Not if you have if you have a 9 to 10 foot.
And it kills the third floor for a commercial building. The 5 feet doesn't sound like it would do that, but that's geometrically, that's what.
We don't have any commercial buildings on 3A, certainly, that are 3 stories. Never have. And in the village, the only examples right now are Cassie's building and 1 Pleasant Street. And 1 Pleasant Street would have to knock 2 feet 10 inches off under this if this definition was in place. And they'd still have 3 stories. And Cassie's building, you know, I have my disagreements on how we calculated Cassie's, but Cassie's is essentially a flat roof, and it is what it is. And Cassie's is the unique building in town because it has the stream going underneath it.
culvert.
That's why it has an extraordinarily high first floor. I think you're attributing.
Well, you may disagree, but the main point is that 5 feet for both the 1.5 and 2.5 stories has a significant impact. You might say, oh, well, you know, gee whiz, it could be not so bad, but you're taking away the geometric options that people currently have by lowering that maximum height by 5 feet for both the two types of structure.
The one type of structure.
One type of structure, and that is
two types: the 1.5 structure and the 2.5 story structure.
No, but we're treating peak roofs differently. So it's a loophole around the 35-foot limit or the 15-foot limit, and it's true. You know,
I mean, I don't think it's a
aren't we
loophole.
supposed to treat everything in the zoning district the same?
I think it's a very useful design option to be able to have a 1.5 story family room, as opposed to maximum 15-foot height.
Well, maybe that's something that can be addressed when we get to the actual heights of the buildings. Right.
We said that to Woody because
that's possible, but that's not included in this change. I mean, I did mention that Milton has a special permit if you want to go higher than the number that's allowed for, you know, that's reasonably necessary, as loose language as that is. Well, you know, obviously nobody wants to go for a special permit if they don't have to.
No, but there's other ways of dealing with it, because remember, a 3-story building on a 5,000 square foot lot right next to their neighbors on 5,000 square foot lot is a lot more intense than a 3-story building on an acre lot.
Yes, absolutely.
Or that, or
setbacks and so forth.
You know, so you could, when you're looking at height in the future, talk about height in relation to setback.
Yeah, you know, I mean, all the zoning conditions, height, setback, whether the 1 story or 1.5 option provides transition. It's really, to make a good solution, it's contextual. How a building, house, or an addition fits.
Right.
It's context.
Could you live with this now with the understanding? Remember, we're not saying there's a 35. This definition does not say.
No, I mean, I can't. I don't like the change, and I think I've been.
And then, so you won't like the change. You won't like the change, no matter when it's done.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to vote for this change out of this committee,
All right.
because I've been consistent, but also the reasons are the same. And Judge Cutler, I certainly appreciate your kicking the tires a little bit to try to talk through this and maybe potentially get me on board with this as a temporary change. I just think it has a lot of unintended consequences, and we talk about this sometimes with zoning. But as an architect, I can see a lot of things that I can do now that I won't be able to do in the future, design-wise, and that would be applicants and homeowners and
possibly.
No, definitely the 5 foot. The 5.
If they
makes a difference, not possibly.
Right, but let's say, for the sake of argument, that in the new height regulations, it said that you could go 40 feet in certain districts. You're measuring to the ridge line of a pitched roof, and it would be 40 feet. So that would satisfy you.
Well, I mean, what would satisfy me is if we voted for this with the additional change of 40 feet to the peak and 20 feet to the peak for 1.5 structures.
Yeah, but I think
then it would essentially, it wouldn't be a design impact change.
There's no sentiment in town for that, Clark. You know that as well as I do.
When you say there's no sentiment, I don't know what you're talking about.
Go to any large
home review. You may be stretching what might be reality.
Okay.
And I think that's a nice way to say it. If you don't mind my
All right, so what I'm
qualifying.
going to ask is this, all right, because I don't want a big fight on a floor of town meeting that winds up with a mess in this definition that it's not reading right, okay? So what I would really think would work would be if there are opponents to this, that you come up with what it is you want different that would make you vote for the rest of this. And then we can have it in the back pocket in case we need to make an amendment on the floor of town meeting. We're not just pulling it out of thin air. We want to have it planned so that whatever amendment is made will fit.
Okay, well, I mean, I just made a suggestion, and Tom said there's no sentiment for this anywhere, but
I believe so.
Well, we can't change, at this point, we haven't advertised a change to the height. Okay, so that stays. So the only thing that can change here would be we go back to measuring from the midpoint.
And what about the fact that we're supposed to treat everything similarly in a zoning district?
You could just change. You could just change that midpoint location as language for an amendment.
That's what I'm saying. I think we need to have that.
And then we vote on it, and at least we get the clarification on the base, and I say that's good.
We have to. If we have to, I think that's, that's something.
Yeah,
if town meeting is, if nobody but you is, or one other person is standing up there and saying this, then there's no sense in bending the motion.
Right.
Well, I mean, I think I have a lot of healthy respect for town meeting, and I think that generally people they will get this height distinction, whether it affects them. I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot of people on the floor of town meeting that are involved with permitting and their own. I mean, most people they live here, they have their own house.
Okay, but if you're proposing an amendment, it would be really useful if we took it through the committee so we know what it's going to say and we know it works with the rest of it if it passes.
Well, okay, point taken. I don't have any specific amendment language that I would propose
Judge Cutler, Tom and I had been working on the clarification of the base of the measurement for, I think, almost 2 years now. So I just wanted to clarify that I was always comfortable with that part of it. It was really just a midpoint.
I know, and I'd like to know why we single out peak roofs for special treatment. I think that's against zoning too.
Well, if you look at the diagrams, essentially the volumetrically, it makes flat roofs and pitch roofs equal. There's a sort of fairness built in. It doesn't prefer flat roofs to peak roofs in terms of volumetric currently. But what you're changing is a volumetric preference for flat roofs.
Yes.
I mean, I don't really believe in, kind of.
And I don't believe anybody in
being
town
hysterical about every house is going to have
houses.
a flat roof now. Oh my God, the whole town's going flat roof. I don't.
That isn't going to happen, and it won't happen.
I don't see that as an argument in this debate.
Then don't make it. The town's not going to rush to flat roofs because of that.
I didn't say I was going to make it. I said I don't.
No, and I was just saying I thought
Tom?
that's what Woody's comment was. I wasn't saying that I believed that. I just thought that was right.
Woody might
say
that.
He might say. Woody supports this with respect to houses in the 35-foot limit. His issue is with garages. And he brought up the fact that, well, we're not going to be able to do in-law apartments. And we reminded him that we haven't even made that decision yet. And if we decide in the fall, when we look at the ADU article and we decide to let ADUs go over garages, then we're going to have to adjust the 15 feet. I agree with him there. We will adjust it. But this is a logical definition. And there are other members of the zoning board who said this is just logical. And that's the sentiment that was on the advisory committee. Everybody is seeing this And even Woody is seeing it with respect to houses, and he can jump on and defend himself if he's listening, but.
But I would say that Clark and Woody are probably the most technical that have voice concern. So I would just, I trust their opinion from a certain regard, not, you know, I have my own opinions, but.
Well, never mind. So anyway, we'll have to defer this since we don't have a full committee here.
So Tom, at this point, this is the planning board's motion, right? That will, under this article. Or whose motion?
I have no idea who's, I presumed it was this committee who was making all the motions, but I don't know who's doing it.
But if you don't have a unanimous, or you don't have a majority vote to make this motion, you're going to have to reconsider, I guess. You know, you don't want to lose the rest of that height definition.
Yeah, honestly, Judge Cutler, the zoning bylaw committees generally, I mean, in the past, we haven't made a recommendation on the floor of town meeting. The bylaw committees that we've had in the past have been an ad hoc committee that have brought things to the floor of town meeting via the planning board and then through advisory, selectmen and ZBA. Not always ZBA, actually.
Fine, then it goes to the floor of town meeting as a planning board motion with a 5-to-1 vote. It's fine by me.
Well, you're going to have the selectmen, advisory, ZBA is going to be
advisory is 8-0. I'm expecting.
But I know, but you don't have to. You don't have to have this committee's.
Fine, then we won't do it. Then we won't.
In order to print the.
Fine, I thought I would give this committee's a courtesy of doing that. But fine, that's it. Fine, then it goes with a 5-1 vote, an 8-0 vote, probably a 5-0 vote, two 5-0 votes tomorrow. That's fine by me. And originally it would have gone to the town floor saying 3-1-1 for this committee, but I'm perfectly fine with going with that. If the one person is the same person, so, you know.
Clark, just want to point out, when we were discussing this before the committee voted on it, on the language, you voted for the language, even though you were opposed to where the measurement was. You said, okay, I'll be opposing it, but as a committee member, I will vote for this.
Well, I didn't vote for, when this committee had its first vote, we basically, I had suggested that we have examples and do analysis. We didn't even talk about the garages or portions of a building that can be closer to the setback. We just voted. I mean, it was, and then afterwards I did my analysis after this committee voted.
And why didn't you do it during the committee's thing? This has been on the working group and the bylaw committee's plate for 2.5 years.
I suggested that as a part of the discussion for our committee that we have examples and analysis. It didn't happen. Now I'm busy, but I did it after the committee voted so that everyone would have something specific to look at to understand the geometry change as clearly and simply as possible. But you can criticize me all you want. It's okay. I mean, it's fine.
We're just trying to figure it out here. That's all. It's not a criticism. You have a right to your opinion, and you are knowledgeable and you have a lot to bring to it. What I'm asking is, when we went over this, you were opposed to measuring at the midline, at the ridge line, and you expressed why, the same reasons you're expressing now. But at the time, as a committee member, you voted for this and said that you would oppose it as an individual member of the planning board at the planning board hearing, but you would vote for the language to go to the planning board.
Well, no, I mean, I voted against it. There was a 3-2 vote on the committee.
Was it?
I don't know. You want to?
It was.
Do you want me to go back to Zoom? Is there a specific date?
No, it was 3-2. And
Was it 3-2? Okay, all right.
It should be 3-1, but that's what it was.
All right, well, all right. So let's just make sure that if there's going to be an active opposition on the floor of town meeting, that we have worked out appropriate amendment language so that it doesn't mess up the rest of what we're proposing.
If we get that courtesy that we have it, we know ahead of time what might be coming, then we'll be prepared for.
Okay.
Yeah, and I haven't thought ahead on how I would fix it
Well,
over
it's
town meeting. I
simple
don't
what
really
you-
like
It's pretty simple what you want. So
amendments on the floor of town meeting, but if it helps with the bottom measurement, and that's what was originally the big concern, then maybe something like that could work. I'll let me think on that some.
it never was solely the concern. So the bottom, the top, the whole thing's been discussed together for years. Anyway, all right. So
I don't know, maybe by you, Tom, but I mean, in terms of our committee work, that there was a concern about the 580 Jerusalem Road, and I mean, I have to say 3 Jerusalem Lane was a tall residence on a very steep site that got a lot of people excited about the height height issue, but there haven't been a whole lot of houses and buildings that have made the general population overly excited.
I'm aware that we have data that the working group compiled about large houses in town, and there aren't that many who have pushed.
I haven't seen that, but even 580 Jerusalem Road, they use the highest point with a big piece of ledge next to the house and the lowest point. And even then it was only like a foot too high. And I think on the planning board at the time, I recommended that it be referred to the ZBA for approval, whether if it exceeds the maximum height. But even the planning board at that point said, no, this is a good looking house and we're not going to do that, Clark.
Whatever, I'm not going to get into revisionist history of what we did and didn't
No, I'm
do.
just saying
we're not always
example.
here to solve a problem.
It's just an example.
I understand, but
the planning board at the time said it's the house isn't awful. It's not.
No, I certainly didn't. I wanted to hit them with $100,000 fine, and because I thought that house was an abomination. But we're not always. The thought is that we're only here to react to problems. No, so we can be proactive. This is a loophole. The trend of buildings, as well as I do, is larger and larger, certainly in the residential areas. That's what people want us to address. And if you've been reading the 143 comments, nobody's fond of the buildings that are being permitted in the village, even though 1 Pleasant Street is not 40 feet tall. And we've
consistently, I mean, people are concerned about change, anything that's changed.
I get that.
And some design approaches are more sensitive, contextual, and relate to their context better than others.
All right.
I'm going to do one more pitch.
No, we've beaten. All right, go ahead. But we have beaten.
One more pitch here for the way we have been approaching this whole updating recodification is to take building block steps at a time. And so we had determined, not the committee necessarily, but selectmen agreed that we would start with the easiest, what we thought would be the easiest things, the building blocks, on which everything else is based. So the height requirements in Article 4 are read by reading what the definition is. That height standing alone, 35 feet, means nothing if you don't know how to measure it. right? So we wanted to make sure, the building inspector particularly called this out as a problem. We wanted to make sure that the rules were clear on how height was going to be measured of a structure or a building. Knowing that next 2 months, whatever, we're going to be working furiously on the table of dimensional regulations to establish what is the height, what is the correct height in each district, and are there exceptions of any kind? And the idea being then we don't have to worry about Article 2 definition of height is there, and that's what we're basing our new height requirements on. So it would be really helpful to have a height measurement passed at town meeting. That's my pitch, so that we can move on to the more specifics in the next couple of months. And, you know, I suppose there might be a couple of people, maybe 2 or 3, who are in the process of designing to build their house and want to get their building permit before this gets advertised. But I can't imagine anybody else is going to be affected. So,
well, you know, there's always going to be some stuff that's in the design queue, right, and or special permits that haven't been issued yet that might be affected and have to do a redesign if this passes.
If, yeah. Or maybe not, because who knows what's going to happen in the fall with what the actual height limit is.
But then that would be if you have a project that you wanted to pull a permit for a week after town meeting.
Well,
you know, do you then wait until the Attorney General signs off, and then,
the Attorney
you know,
General,
it's a purgatory, so to speak, for
but if the
for
Attorney
people who
General
want to pull
signs
permits.
off, it's retroactive, isn't it, to May 1st?
If it's approved on the floor of town meeting, it
it's
would
retroactive.
be anything
But next fall,
from the point of advertising.
Right, but next fall, you know that we are addressing this height. And we're going to be addressing it in more detail, and as you say, contextually. And for all you know, somebody might be able to build 42 feet high with the new regulations. You know,
yeah, and I don't know, and maybe that's an argument for putting this dimensional change off until we have all the district kind of height challenges or opportunities thought through.
Well, that's just me, that's backwards, but
right.
I get it.
I mean, you're definitely changing something here that we've had for a long period of time. And I agree with Woody, it has sort of the most impact on these lower 1.5-story family room, garage, porches.
And we're not making major zoning decisions based on garages. You know what? And
sure,
you know,
but it's a common element for residential construction.
Here is my guess.
Common goal for people is to have a garage with their house.
Yeah, I know that. And a car doesn't need the floor height for putting a car in is certainly not over 9-10 feet, certainly 8-9 feet. Anyway, by the way, my guess that there is going to be an impetus to expand ADUs to outbuildings, to garages and that, and we're going to make that change. And that is when we're going to have to address both setbacks for garages and the height of garages when we, in conjunction with that change. And maybe 15 feet if you don't do an ADU, it'll be 20 feet, maybe even taller if you do an ADU. Setback maybe 5 feet if you don't do an ADU, maybe be 10 feet. You know, but I think my guess is we're heading in the direction of allowing ADUs in garages. So, you know, we shall see, but we'll deal with it. The definition has got nothing to do with the number that we apply to it. The definition is common sense and closing a loophole and treating every type of roof equally.
Well, I mean, I don't see it as a loophole. You're saying you think it's a loophole, but
Well,
I
yes, if the
haven't seen
town
an
in its,
argument. I mean,
well, the
more
town in its wisdom
more
has said we
towns
want a 35
you-
feet height limit.
use the midpoint of rafter as a way to establish height than peak.
All right, well, anyway, we're gonna beat this to a dead horse. David, oh, look,
Yeah.
another guy. Zoom is wonderful. You can drive in the car. And
I know.
Nice.
But I'm
Careful.
we got two
I'm
people.
pulling in.
Yeah.
I'm pulling in home, so I'm going to get on the other computer. But
Well, we're pretty much done, David, because
Good.
we reaffirmed some votes, but we're sort of at a loggerhead here tonight with the height definition because there's only 3 of us were here and we were split 1-1-1. So
I understand Clark's point, and he's made his position abundantly clear. But you know, I just think we just have a disagreement on the board on it, and that's okay. But I do think, you know, kind of playing Jenga with it to say, well, let's put it off or something. I think we want to hear from the town and the people of where they want to stand on this, because if they can't agree with the definitional change in height to deal with that loophole, then that's going to be a good precursor of where we're going in the fall. If they can't agree with that, then when you're dealing with all this other stuff, well, that's going to be a mind blower, you know. I mean, I get, and that, but and it also tell us what road we need to go down, maybe with some of those changes. And the boards, you know, that we've gone to so far have, you know, agreed with the new height definition at this point. So
yeah, not
But
really, not at least with respect to houses and commercial buildings, not one word of dissent about it.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm always willing to take in more information on it, but I just, but it is a loophole. I mean, it's how you measure it. That's the big issue with it, and it's you know, the town has wanted 35 feet, but that's not what we're getting in reality. We have a legal fiction. That's what we have. It's on paper, it says 35, but when you go out there in actuality, when something's built, it's not even close to that. You know, and again, we're talking about when you've got mostly slope land or different types of topographies on a flat piece. It's going to be relatively straightforward. But we know most of the land in Cohasset, especially on the, I think one side is all hills and rocks and everything else. So.
All right. So we're done for tonight. Other than minutes, did anybody get to see the minutes I circulated late in the day?
I did.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Yeah, the minutes were for March 6th. I'll second it. All in favor?
Clark Brewer,
Aye.
aye.
Okay. All right. So Cassandra, I thought to give us a little break before we jump into the fall articles. We'd only have one meeting in April. We will post a meeting for the night of town meeting.
Yeah.
So the agenda that you saw for today is actually the agenda for April. Be our final review, consider what our presentation is going to be. I know the select board tomorrow night is going to have some thoughts, I think, about the presentation. And Judge Cutler, I kind of said to one of them I ran into yesterday. Oh, and by the way, I was at the rec fair yesterday, and I had 40 copies of our little handouts of the slideshow of the introduction of what we're doing and why, and then the summaries of the articles. I don't know, I might have given out maybe half of them. Got, you know, a couple of people engaged in some discussion, but you know, it was the rec fair. Yeah, and I thought I'd see you there, Clark, but you had illness, so it was good.
Yeah, we
but
were.
It was, you know, yeah, it was. Of course, it was well
indoors.
attended. Yeah, it was well attended, so there was at least some visibility that people who didn't stop at least saw that something's going on with zoning, and to the extent they show up at town meeting, you know, we got a couple of people who said, you know, well, I've got little ones, and we try to remind people there is babysitting. But anyway, so the selectmen might, and I kind of said to this one select person last night that kind of what we've done with advisory and zoning, planning, and them that we're going to do tomorrow night, you know, like summaries, have the text ready, got to do the little intro thing first. I got to talk to Danny about it. I'll probably go hair over 5 minutes, but I thought that's how we do, and we'll just go in order. We're going to go in numerical order rather than the order we've been doing, and but that's for our next meeting. So Cassandra, I don't know what night it works for everybody, a Monday or a Wednesday. Let's everybody's calendars.
I had it tentatively scheduled for April 19th, which is a Wednesday, but I can always alter that if that doesn't work for people or if you'd prefer a different night.
Isn't that the Lexington and Concord Day or something? Isn't that the actual Patriots Day?
Patriots Day.
Well, all right. If everybody can, I don't know if is that school vacation week. Is anybody going to be tied up with that?
No, that's fine.
I'm going to be out of town school vacation.
What's the
week.
date? What's
The
the date?
19th of April?
Wednesday the 19th.
Oh yeah, I actually am away for that.
You can Zoom from where. Yeah. Well, all right. I mean.
Yeah, we could Zoom in from wherever.
Yeah, if you have a strong objection to zooming in, we'll do it the 19th. And I do want to then just introduce the road ahead, because the judge and I have said that it's a very ambitious schedule for the fall, and it is, but the horse is out of the barn already, and we can't. Smart developers may start pushing ahead with things to beat the changes, even though there are no changes that have actually been thrown out there yet. Yeah. But some of the workload is there's some of the articles have a lot of heavy workload and others don't. And the wind and solar kind of subbed that out already to the Alternative Energy Committee. I am meeting tomorrow with the Concom agent, Cassandra. I think you're going to be invited, Concom chair, and our new resiliency person, whoever, Montana Castle. And we're going to start talking about the climate change resiliency thing. That honestly could probably—
We're not getting there in the fall.
No. And that honestly could be spring of 24 for any new initiative. But what my concern is that I heard that Concom was starting to think about this and their bylaw and the stormwater bylaw. So I just want us to all be on the same page for whatever the timing is of that. So anyway, that's what's on the agenda.
I was going to say, I know you're in that. Tomorrow isn't good for me, but as you develop it with the Concom or whatever, we could certainly tie in, because I was there when we passed the I was on the Conservation Commission when we passed the stormwater bylaw. I know it's had a few amendments since, but whatever you need help with on that front, yeah.
Yeah, and I was looking at MAPC's site when I had 5 minutes today, and they have a model floodplain bylaw. I don't know if ours was ever written according to that, but
I think unfortunately it was.
I don't know if we need to change it, but now they call it a floodplain, as part of their climate resiliency package. And Clark, I wanted you to look at the low impact development stuff that they have.
LID.
Yeah, whatever. So, there's a lot to look at. And then there's some studies, and I have a question out to Chris of, do we have to put these studies out to bid, or can we just go to Weston and Sampson and get a couple of things done quickly? But, and then ideas for forums. Lauren had suggested a while ago that when we go to the public, something different than presentation and feedback, so if anybody has any ideas. I also think we should make use of some polls online. I got into that discussion with the Alternative Energy Committee. I think there's some topics where we can—
You mean surveys?
Yeah, Justin says we use SurveyMonkey.
Yeah.
Online. And so there's some issues like, for example, on ADUs. I mean, that's a pretty simple thing. We could get feedback on that one by a survey.
That's a great idea.
Rather than holding a forum there. And some of the other ideas as we float them out there, including whether 35 feet makes sense everywhere in town, that can certainly go out on a SurveyMonkey poll. So
the thing is I don't have a problem with SurveyMonkey. I think it is a good tool, but you also have to look at whom you're getting the responses from. There's a lot of elderly people who don't even have computers, let alone being able to respond to it. And if you remember during COVID, when they wanted people to get their shots, they said, oh yeah, just go to this website, and half of the Cape lit up because they don't have iPhones or computers or whatever, and they were all 75 and older. So I think it's a great tool to use, but I don't know how definitive it is, because what population are you getting it from?
Yeah, there's
You have
nothing.
to take it with a grain of salt.
There's nothing perfect for us, and
Hey.
if the online stuff, like the thing yesterday is designed to get to the demographic who's not coming to any of these forums and can't come to night meetings. Okay, maybe they're the ones too who are going to respond by computer to things, and they're the future of the town, so we probably should solicit their opinion. But
I got no problem with casting the net and seeing what we can get out of it. I mean, that's certainly helpful information.
We can flesh some of that out at our next meeting. So all right. So tomorrow night, zoning votes at 6 o'clock on by Zoom. The selectmen.
You need me for that, or you?
I don't think so. I don't think so, but the
beaten every dead horse that we can.
Right. No, I'm not concerned about how the votes are going to go there, and I don't think they're going to have any more questions.
With the meeting tomorrow, I would say they have quite a big agenda tomorrow. So, as you're doing the presentation, if they like it, get them to vote it, move it on. But if they want more information,
you mean the select board? Yeah. The select.
It's a big agenda.
Yeah, so the select board, Judge Carter, they have us on for 8:15. Whether they keep to that is another issue. But like I said, I've run into a couple of them. I'm not anticipating, the 2-hour meeting. I said this earlier, Dave, that advisory was a little over an hour. I'm thinking it's going to be more that than the other. I don't think they're going to go into a lot of the weeds on this stuff.
I wouldn't expect so, no.
But we're the last thing on the agenda, so. If it's not 8:15, who knows? That's the problem. All right. Thank you all for being here. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Clark Brewer, aye.
I'm Callahan, aye.
David Frog, aye.
Cassie Malatesta, aye.
All right. Thank you all. You're in cars. Be
Thanks,
safe.
everyone.
Good night.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thank you for all your hard work.